We're going to go ahead and start now.
Excellent.
There is not a quorum. What I would like to do with the, without objection from the board members who are present is begin with a moment of silence, as is the custom of the board for those members who have died in the line of duty since the last board meeting.
Jason Granaman here.
Dwight Dively's here.
Oh, Jason and Dwight, welcome. We have Dennis and
Paul.
Ade
Ade.
online or on the phone as well. It's just the four of you. There's nobody here in the boardroom, so I'm going to go ahead and run the meeting, and there's not a quorum. We just recognized a moment of silence for members who had participated or who had died in the line of duty since the last board meeting. Hi, who's joined us?
Hi, good morning, Steve. It's Mark.
Mark, good morning. We've got Dwight and Ade and Dennis and Jason online, so there's five of you. There's nobody here in the boardroom. And we just observed a moment of silence, and I wanted to make a special mention of Pierce County Deputy Daniel McCartney. He's been in the news quite a bit since his line of duty death recently, and especially for both for board members like Mark, who's been here since the beginning, and some of the newer board members. I wanted to make a brief mention about the work that the board has done in the over the past 15 years. I don't know that any of you knew Officer McCartney or Deputy McCartney personally or his family, but there is no doubt that the work of the board has affected the benefits that are now available for his widow and his family. His widow is going to receive a lump sum duty-related death benefit, and that the amount of that benefit is was adjusted based on board legislation to add a COLA years ago. The pension benefit that Deputy McCartney earned will pass on to his widow without an early retirement reduction and without a spouse reduction. Both of those were left to board bills. The widow and her children will receive medical insurance. She'll get that for life, and they'll get that until they reach majority. That was a left to board bill. And if his boys decide that they want to attend college or university in the state of Washington, they'll be eligible for tuition waivers. That was also a left to board bill. So I wanted to take this brief moment to at least remind you and recognize you of the importance of the work that you do in the lives and families of all the members that you represent, especially when they really need it, like his family does now. With that, I will begin a legislative update. Today is day 10 of a 60-day legislative session. So there is one left to board bill. That is the interrupted military service credit bill that came out of the study that the board was done. That bill has been introduced in the House and the Senate. The number of the bill is having a little bit of technical difficulty here moving the screen, so I'm just going to bail on that. In the House, it's 2701, and in the Senate, it's 6377. That's sponsored by Representative Berquist and Senator Warnock on the board. Now, the bill has not yet been scheduled for a hearing. I'll keep you up to date, but one of the things that I wanted to bring to your attention regarding the bill has to do with the questions. At the time, legislators were considering sponsoring the bill, and prior to the introduction of the board bill, there was an introduction from another legislator with a bill also changing the definition for that same section of statute. The questions and the different bill both kind of touch on a similar topic, which is there are a number of other conflicts for which that members have served in that are not listed in 4104-005 currently and were not added by the Left 2 board bill. Those conflicts where the questions have come up are generally related to U.S. military support of UN missions or NATO missions or friendly governments, and they're considered by the Department of Defense to be separate from combat missions. So the original 2005 legislation and the current board legislation focused on providing no-cost service credit for members who served in combat and who got a campaign medal. The types of conflicts where these questions are coming up are usually the types of conflicts for which you can't earn a campaign medal, but you earn what's called an expeditionary medal. I don't know, at this point in time, I mentioned the board's bill has not yet been scheduled for a hearing, and the bill by Representative Murray also has not yet been scheduled. These are the types of questions I'll be working with individual legislators and with any of you. If you guys get similar questions from your constituency about, Operation Restore Hope, or the Department of Defense identifies currently at least 40 different operations for which a member can be awarded an expeditionary medal. Many of those operations, including some of the ones that were mentioned in Representative Murray's bill, took place prior to 1977, before the creation of Left 2, but there's at least 23 that have taken place since 1977. So there's quite a bit of opportunity for confusion and questions about this topic, and it's also created a question amongst some of the legislators and legislative staff in terms of where does the legislature as a whole sort of line up with the policy that was set up in 2005 and the policy that you reaffirmed this year, that the no member cost service is only for combat operations. There seems to be a number of legislators who'd be willing to extend or would like to extend that policy beyond combat related service. However, they may not be aware of the cost of that. Many of them may not even be aware of the original policy distinction. They may just be aware, some of them because they served in a particular conflict and were awarded that expeditionary medal. They may just be wondering, why did that get left off the list? Well, let's add it. In any event, I'll try to get more information and keep you posted about the progress of the interruptive military bill as it works its way through session. The other bills impacting Left Plan 2 that I want to talk about this morning are kind of follows up on policy issues that were discussed by the legislature last year, specifically related to L&I and the treatment of PTSD, plus the treatment of certain other work-related illnesses and conditions. I'll start with PTSD first. If today, under existing law, if a member suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder as a result of a clearly defined single event, then that's the type of that condition is considered by LNI to be a work-related condition. And as a result, it is also then considered by Left 2 to be a duty-related condition if that event is duty-related, and could then be the basis if the PTSD is severe enough for a duty-related disability retirement. The science around PTSD has been evolving for a number of years, and the Diagnostic Standards Manual was updated several years ago to recognize that PTSD doesn't just always occur from a single event, that it can be the result of prolonged exposures or multiple exposures to similar events. That type of fact situation is not contemplated or covered under existing LNI law. And so there was some discussion last year about adding PTSD in those types of fact situations into LNI just to be covered. There's also legislation to take it a step further and say that PTSD, regardless of how it was developed, is a presumptive illness. In other words, instead of the member having to prove that their PTSD is the result of their employment, the burden is on the employer to prove that it is not. The legislation regarding PTSD from last session is technically still alive, and it's moving forward or still being discussed, and there's some new legislation as well in the Senate. There'll be some hearings in the Senate this week on that topic. There's also, separate and apart from PTSD, there was legislation adding a number of different cancers to the existing presumption for firefighters in LNI. Under current law, there are a number of listed cancers, and if a firefighter develops that cancer, then it's presumed to be duty-related. The list hasn't been modified in a number of years, but there are there's some medical evidence or some statistical evidence showing a higher than normal incidence of certain types of cancers among firefighters, and so there's discussion about updating that list this session. In addition to that, the legislation may add certain other medical conditions, so things like MRSA or heart attacks and strokes for law enforcement officers, to the list of conditions that are presumed to be duty-related if a member gets them. We'll keep you updated on that. Again, this is changing LNI law, but there is a carryover into pensions, because if a condition is determined to be in the course of employment by LNI, then the courts have said that means exactly the same thing as in the line of duty under Left Plan 2. And so if it's work-related for LNI purposes, it's duty-related for DRS purposes. And so to the extent that these conditions are disabling conditions, then they would be the basis for a duty disability retirement as opposed to a non-duty disability retirement. The There are a couple of other bills that I don't want to go into too much detail on right now, but I'd be happy to answer questions if you have them. One would extend the firefighter presumptions that I mentioned earlier to EMTs and fire investigators, arson investigators that aren't currently covered by that presumption. One of the topics that the board mentioned or heard earlier this interim had to do with McNeil Island firefighters. They are currently in the PSERS system or PERS system, and there was legislation to move them into the LEF system. Again, I didn't want to go into those, but I would be happy to answer any questions about those or the other interrupted military bill. If not, I would move on to the second part of the meeting, the administrative update.
Yep, I don't have any questions, Steve.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you, though.
Yeah.
I'm fine. Thank you.
And Steve, I just heard another beep, like while you were speaking, so I'm just curious if someone else joined and or if we now have a quorum.
Yeah, this is Michael White. I joined.
Okay. Mike, there is nobody here in the office, but with your addition now, there is a quorum present. I just wanted to give you all notify you of that. We've just finished up the legislative update, and we're moving on to the administrative update if there are no objections. For the administrative update, the first piece I wanted to mention is DRS rulemaking. We have concluded the work, I believe, on the WACs, the rules regarding duty-related disabilities in LEF 2. Those draft rules are under review over at DRS, and hopefully that review will be completed soon, and then they can move on. Not related to rulemaking, but if you have any questions, DRS has also moved forward with the implementation of the EMTs into the hospital district EMT bill from last year. I know I've been getting a number of questions from members about where they fit in the process of receiving notice. As I understand it right now, and there's DRS people here that can correct me if I've got it wrong, but for those employers who have all their salary data and have been able to submit that to DRS, the notice and some of the options, the initial letter from DRS has gone out to all the active employees. And then now I believe it has also gone out to all of the inactive employees. And by the end of the month, for certain, all the inactive employees and retirees should receive their letters. DRS is still working with a couple of employers to get their past salary data. A number of these employers are fairly small. They don't do their bookkeeping or payroll in-house, and they've contracted since 2005. The bill goes back quite a ways. Some of them have had multiple vendors to do their payroll for them, and it's proving a bit of a challenge to get some of that historical payroll information. But DRS is still working with them, and the expectation is that they will have it all. Rulemaking, following the completion of the duty-related disability rule, there were sort of two other topics in the pipeline that we're hoping to move forward on in 2018. One has to do with employees who are in LEF, were in LEF, but now they've moved into a job, maybe they promoted into a job where firefighting or law enforcement is no longer their daily, their regular daily duties anymore. For instance, perhaps they are a training firefighter, or they train firefighters. They don't really supervise. They don't go out and fight fires anymore, but they are still they want experienced firefighters in those positions. Another position that questions typically come up with has to do with what are called fire marshals or fire investigators. In a lot of jurisdictions, the employer has decided they want an experienced firefighter in those positions, and they want to make sure that they don't get kicked out of LEF when they accept that promotion. In other jurisdictions, they've decided they don't need that level of expertise in the position, and they'll hire non-LEF employees to fill them. And the expectation is that those positions then would not create LEF membership. This was all worked out 5-6 years ago with the Department of Retirement Systems, but the documentation of that and the rulemaking to follow up on that still needs to be completed, because questions occasionally pop up, and a number of the people who were at the DRS, part of that DRS process years ago, they're all in California now, so the institutional memory is stretched a little thin, and we want to capture some of this stuff before it completely disappears altogether. Another rule that is been talked about and we'll hope to get resolved has to do with identifying the primary duty of the position as one of the key things. There's been some questions come up. For instance, a hypothetical question: what if there were no fires in the city of Olympia for a month? Would DRS kick all the firefighters out of LEF? And the answer to that is no, or at least the answer from the current administration and the past administration is no, but there's always a fear that unless that philosophy is captured, then there could be a time in the future where somebody would look at the statute and say, no, you didn't perform, a majority of your duties were not related to the extinguishing of fires in the past month or the past 6 months or the past 9 months or whatever period, and therefore your membership has lapsed. So those are a couple of more housekeeping type issues that we're hoped to get taken care of in 2018. Just wanted to give you a heads up on that, and I'll keep you apprised of the status of future DRS rulemaking and let you know when the duty-related disability rules are finalized by DRS. Outreach activities. The firefighters had their legislative conference earlier in session. I spoke briefly at that conference. The WACOPS will have their winter meeting next week, and I will be doing a brief presentation there. I'll have Tammy and Tim with me. WACOPS, one of the things in addition to the legislative piece they wanted to cover this year is a presentation on how to find things on our website. So for instance, you board members will remember that great video that Paul debuted at the October strategic planning meeting, discussing a comparison of LEF to other plans, LEF Plan 2 to other plans around the country. We get questions about that all the time, and so helping members understand what type of information is out on the website and how they can find it is something that WACOPS asked for and will be providing next week. The final item on the administrative update is a quarterly budget update. You all should have received the spreadsheet. I did want to mention, one, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have on that. The agency budget overall for the first 6 months of the biennium is overspent a bit. I wanted to let you know, though, that wasn't unexpected. We knew going into this transition period, we've got a lot of new board members, and that we expected a ramp up in training and professional development costs. If necessary, then that's something that we can adjust in the second year of the biennium to make sure that we don't go over budget. So I just wanted to let you know that we're aware of that, planned for that, and have a plan in place to manage that in case you had any questions. But if you had any questions about that or any other part of the budget, I'd be happy to answer them. Okay.
Nope, I don't.
The next meeting of the board is February 28th. The legislature will still be in session, so we expect to have the format of that meeting be similar to that of today, where we'll have a legislative update and an administrative update. May or may not have a quorum, may have a number of members who are attending by phone. Are there any other questions about anything that I talked about today or that I didn't talk about today that you would like to ask me before we conclude this morning's meeting?
Steve, this is Jason. I don't have any questions, just a comment. I just wanted to thank you for your remarks this morning on the deputy that was killed in line of duty and reminding us about those legislations, because those are important to talk about when we're struggling through times like this when people ask questions. So thank you for that.
You're welcome, Jason. You guys, I'm proud of the work that the board has done. I'm happy that I've been able to help you over the years, times like this where the importance of your work sort of comes home a little bit. Any other questions or comments?
Nope, I'd just like to say thanks, Steve. Mark again. Thank you very much. Yep, for all your hard work, and it's good to bring people up to speed on the differences between the benefits in the system, especially when it comes to line of duty deaths from the past until now.
All right.
Steve,
Yeah.
Steve, this is Ade. Thank you for the update. I'm just wondering, in cases like this, where we've lost an officer, does LEV send somebody there? I'm just
No, we don't. We don't automatically, if we're asked, and that. Look, for instance, there was we weren't asked to send anyone to the memorial service for Deputy McCartney. That'll be later this afternoon. If we had been asked, we would have. Sometimes in the past, when there's been questions about what benefits are available or disagreements, perhaps, about whether a member's family is covered under the board statutes, we'll get involved in those situations. I think the last time we were specifically invited to anything was the memorial for the Lakewood police officers, and I think at that time part of it had to do with there was board legislation that was part of the governor's task force recommendations for changes following that. Occasionally, again, like I said, what generally happens is the local will assign an officer or a person to sort of take the lead on handling things for the family, and then we'll end up working with that person, answering any questions that they have or resolving any questions or disagreements that come up.
We've talked briefly about outreach And maybe we can pick up this conversation later, or maybe we can just ignore it now. I'm just wondering, as part of the outreach, if, and hopefully some of my colleagues will speak to that too, if as part of the outreach and the human nature, if left what you send somebody there, where, especially in a case like this, and be able to give family member a card. If you need anything, please call us. So that, because I think in times like these, the family has so much, and I think I'm just wondering if we can be part of, if you need us, we're here for you.
That's a good point, Ade. The way we handle it now, usually the officers, kind of brothers and sisters, their family at their employment, sort of take up that initial, what do you need? And I guarantee you, all of the organizations have Tammy's card. And she does go out and attend meetings when they happen around the state for groups that assist families in times like this. And so the individual widow or the individual child doesn't always contact us directly, but the people that they do contact, they know who Tammy is, they know who the left board is, and they know where they can get any questions answered. Also, when it's a case that is so clear as this one is, I want to give credit to Department of Labor and Industries and the Department of Retirement Systems. They handle things so quickly and so smoothly that there usually aren't a lot of questions. The Department of Labor and Industries will issue a preliminary ruling that a death is duty related or in the course of employment, sometimes within just a couple of days in a situation like this, to make sure that L&I benefits are available to the family. And even without being contacted, when there's something like this that is publicized, DRS is very proactive. They're on it in terms of having estimates ready, materials ready, so that the first time they are contacted, either by the family or by the person that's helping the family, the process moves very quickly and very straightforward, so that there's no interruptions in benefits, unnecessary interruptions anyway, in benefits to the families.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else? All right, then I will speak to you again. I'll plan on speaking to you again on February 28th. But as a reminder, especially during session, all of you have my cell phone. All of you can email me or contact me with any questions that come up, especially if it's session related. Things move so quickly that some of the things that I talked to you about this morning will have already changed by this afternoon. I can guarantee it. And so if you hear crazy rumors, for instance, I am Crazy Rumor Control Central. But also if you just have specific questions that might help you answer questions that you're getting regarding a bill, I'd be happy to assist in that as well. With that, I will talk to you all on the 28th, if not sooner.
Very good.
Thank you.
Steve.